Right Circle, a prized initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Today, we are delighted to present an engaging conversation with a prominent luminary in the world of journalism, Neerja Chowdhury. The Right Circle event has been organized by Prabha Khaitan Foundation in association with venue and hospitality partner Centra Greens with the support of SR's Women of Ludhiana. It is supported by patron Sri Cement Limited as their CSR initiative, whose glorious career of political journalism has spanned 4 decades and whose insightful political analysis and unique style of journalism are commendable. I'm sure all of us here are very excited to hear from Neerja ji. But before that, allow me to take a few minutes to talk about Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a non-profitable trust based in Kolkata of working for a better tomorrow is woven in her famous words, Karam hi Jeevan hai. The foundation dedicatedly works towards widening the reach and readership of English literature, Hindi literature and regional literature under the auspices of its multifaceted initiatives like An Author's Afternoon, The Right Circle, The Universe Writes, Aakhar, Kalam and Loves. The Right Circle is one of the stellar initiatives of the foundation because it gives a platform for writers in the English language and widens its reach and readership. Notable authors get to interact about their life and literary works with a discerning audience. Music to us is an art form that is of utmost importance. Introducing the music of the month for November, Born from the Land, curated and composed by 3-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage. The composer has conceptualized 12 musical pieces for the foundation, each representing a different theme. The soundtrack features Senegalese Baba Mal, Grammy Award winner Lodi Park, the Zanzi Youth Choir from South Africa, and IP Singh from India. It has been performed at key international events to raise awareness about the challenges and problems associated with land degradation and desertification worldwide. Neerja ji doesn't need any introduction, but I am taking the liberty to say a few words about her. Neerja Chowdhury is an award-winning journalist, columnist, and political commentator. In the course of a distinguished career of over 40 years, she was political editor of the Indian Express for 10 years and covered the terms of 8 prime ministers and 10 Lok Sabha elections. She has won several prestigious awards for her journalism, including the first Chameli Devi Jain Award for Outstanding Women Media Persons, the India Today PUCL Journalism for Human Rights Award, and the Prem Bhatia Award for Best Political Reporting. She is contributing editor, the Indian Express, and her weekly column, the Neerja Chowdhury column, is widely followed by participants and observers of contemporary Indian politics. She lives in Gurgaon. Conducting today's conversation is Deepika Bhalla, SR's Woman of Ludhiana. Professionally, she is a jewelry designer, businesswoman, and a freelance writer. So without further ado, let us embark on this literary journey together and celebrate the magic of words in the company of Neerja ji and Deepika. Welcome and let the stories begin. Before we start on this book, which discusses the 6 prime ministers out of the 14, I have a few personal questions for you. Why politics for you? You're the key commentator, political commentator of a country. So why, when you were choosing to be writing and the beat, as we call it in newspaper, why was it politics for you?
I cut my teeth in journalism working on a news weekly in Bombay, and that was during the emergency years, 75 to 77. And I used to write a column called This India. And I would find people, interesting people, a Mochi sitting there, how will he view life? Somebody who's an Anganwadi worker, and so on. It would be fascinating for me. It used to be a long column to write about these people and their views, their aspirations, their life. Then after that, and of course we resisted the emergency as a magazine, And this is a very interesting story that we were hounded. We were among the smaller papers who were hounded by the government. So the printing press that was printing Himmat, pressure came on them not to do it. So finally, moving from one press to the other, to the other, to the other, we decided we must get a little printing press of our own. And we put out an appeal in Himmat, and we put out a graph on the wall, a chart, and you won't believe it, money orders would come even for ₹1.
Wow.
I remember one of the papers in Tamil Nadu had replicated this appeal, and their readers, so many of them sent ₹1 money orders. Oh, graph बढ़ता गया till it reached 70,000. It was very exciting, and we bought a little press, and we started to print Himmat there. उस समय बोलते थे कि Himmat is being sold in black, because it wouldn't be available and people wanted to read.
And this was during emergency when there was so much censorship on the press.
But then also we would work with people who were bringing out these sheets underground. Sunday को हम लोग इकट्ठा करते थे उसको, then they would distribute it and so on. Anyway, then I came to answering your question. I came to the Statesman and I became its civil rights correspondent, the first and only civil rights correspondent. And I was interested in writing about under trials. I was interested in writing. I wrote about bonded labor. I wrote about child labor. I wrote about women's issues and PILs I filed. So my start in journalism was writing on these issues. But very soon I realized that politics was everywhere. Whichever field you went to, there was politics. And that you had to understand politics and how it determined the direction of our country. So when I moved to the Indian Express, I then started to do political writing.
So, coming to that underground press and your first paper, nowadays there's so many online presence of so many magazines, daily newspapers and channels like Fate D'Souza. And I've read so many of your articles in Karma and Scribe and Scroll. So what do you have to say about these magazines? They're obviously not the print media, but online. Do you think the online is taking over?
Absolutely. Online is taking over, and now the younger people, I was saying to Dhwani who's here, we cannot start the day without reading the newspapers.
Yes.
Even during COVID, we risk having the newspapers come. It's like your cup of tea in the morning, our generation. But the younger generation, my son and his friends, they don't do it. They don't read the papers. They don't even watch television.
But they are aware all the same.
But they are aware precisely for what they say.
Exactly.
So many online, this free data, the communication revolution, the new media, social media, is just exploded. And where it's going to take us, I don't know. That's another story. But certainly, large number, we ourselves are referring during the day. We would normally know in the morning, the next day, what the news was. Today, we know it within minutes.
Yes.
What's happened. So certainly, I agree with you. It's a different media scene.
This explosion of the digital media is also because there's more censorship in the print media, and in the digital form, the censorship they somehow managed to escape. Like some of the pieces, and like there's this big lobby against the Godi media and the non-Godi media, as people like to call it. Is the digital media, the non-Godi media, some of them, do you feel like there's a different...
They are also facing challenges now, pressures. And yes, what you're saying, say the print media and the electronic media, the pressures would come on the proprietors and the media houses. Now they don't feel they need to go to the working journalists. Somebody was telling me only 2 days ago, working journalists will do what the proprietor and the editor tells him or her to do. So I don't have to worry about it. But it's given the pressures, and I think there is a belief And this is true of all parties. The Congress did it as much as the BJP is doing it. The BJP may be doing it on a scale, the Congress didn't do it, maybe doing it more efficiently. But politicians, governments, they hate criticism.
Absolutely.
And they think the media's role is to do PR for the government and their politics. There are very few, the old school politicians still put up with this. You know, that the media had to show the aina to society, to the government, so that things could be put right. That was the traditional role. I still feel, you know, that I must give both sides of the story. I may disagree, I may think this person is lying to the teeth, but I must still give the other person's story. This is old school that we were taught, but this is fast disappearing.
I'm going to start the conversation with some of the people who are also not interested in politics, maybe. The book should be read not only for politics, but also the little anecdotes she's included about all the prime ministers, which probably I didn't know. Like about Indira Gandhi. Today's sari was inspired by one of the paragraphs written by her. So Indira Gandhi, when she was touring for her election, she has written that she could pack just 6-7 saris and be on a tour, India tour for her election campaign. बस वो उनके लिए काफी था. Some of my friends know I had a very busy day today. मैं सूट में थी सुबह से. I thought ऐसे ही चली जाऊंगी मैम के पास, ठीक है. And then I just remembered that नहीं, मैं change तो कर ही सकती हूँ थोड़ा सा. हाँ. Or then again about Vajpayee ji, like his love for the good things in life. That is also an amazing chapter. How he would call up on journalists and people he knew. New York में best steak कहाँ मिलता है, यहाँ पे wine कहाँ best मिलती है. He loved his drink. All these tidbits are brilliantly brought to life in her book. So even if politics does not do it for you, you must read the book for the insights, the personal insights also. She had a ringside view to all of them.
You know about these saris, there are a lot of women sitting here. Somebody asked me, how did you notice that Gusharan Kaur at that dinner that Bush and the First Lady gave Manmohan Singh and his wife in 2005, that she was wearing a black sari with a red border? Or how did you find out Sonia Gandhi at the anniversary of the UPA was wearing a blue sari on the stage? Was the only color. Now maybe it's the woman in me. You know, you will find all of it. There's an eye for this kind of detail, and it makes, I find prime ministers are as human as anyone else.
Yes.
They have their vulnerabilities, they have their, as I say, the underbelly of Indian politics, the machination, the manipulation, the backstabbing, but sometimes flashes of, wisdom and the good. And I, when I started writing, I told a friend of mine, I want really this book to be read by the millennials. My generation will read it walking down memory lane. For them it's very interesting.
Yes.
Because they know this is what happened, and this has more detail. You know, a little bit of conversation, anecdote, so they will be interested. But actually I want the millennials to read this, of what went. And when younger people tell me that they found the book interesting and they read it through, that excites me. फिर मुझे लगता है जितना भी effort था ना, sometimes during these COVID years you won't believe it. This book was written during the COVID years, and my husband moved the computer from the second floor where I used to work, because up down करना पड़ता था, to our bedroom, and put a lamp there, and there was a bed where you are, where I'm sitting is the computer, and where that sofa is where the dining table would be. My life was this triangle for 2.5 years. I don't know where time went, and I was constantly living with these characters and you know what they were up to, and so in that sense I wanted to write it. मेरा झगड़ा कई बार होता था editors से जो edit कर रहे थे. I said this book is not meant to be a prose. This book is drama, suspense. Politics is that. Politics is drama and suspense. It is not beautiful prose at all. So I don't know whether I've captured that, but that was my attempt. And I also felt, in a way, we are an attention deficit generation. To keep our attention for long, given the contending flow of information that's coming at us all the time. So somewhere one has to hook the interest of people and take them along and tell that political story has to be told, but it has to be told in a different way. So I don't know whether I've succeeded, but that was my attempt.
Beautifully, because if I ever Google about these prime ministers, I will Google about the international policy or whatever change, like in Mandal case, and जो भी landmark decisions थे. I would never Google वाजपेयी जी की कौन सी poem print हुई है. And there are two beautiful poems which you've mentioned in the books. They really moved me. I mean, if you can read them.
All his poetry is amazing.
The poems she's included in the books are amazing.
For every prime minister, they all talked about this loneliness because the buck stops with it.
Yes.
And it's in a very personalized sense, this loneliness. And VP Singh said, I can't go for a holiday, I can't, if I want to play golf or something, tennis, I can't just take off. I'm constantly, Gujarat equally. Tanta laga rehta logon ka, you don't have a minute to yourself. And Vajpayee said this is a loneliness really in a sense that he said, sometimes I wish I hadn't entered politics. And then I stuck to poetry, which was really what he wanted to do. And these amazing poems that he wrote, which also made him a moderate. This is a fascinating thing for me and for many people, why Vajpayee was a moderate in a right-wing hawkish party. Advaniji used to say this many times, We've come to the same stream and he's called a moderate and I'm called a hawk. Why? And that's a very interesting thing, why? Which I've explored. Till 3:35.
And नीचे को back.
ये भी ना 1988 की है poem. Very few people know that Vajpayee had cancer. I asked Yashwant Sinha only a couple of years, not even a couple of years ago, who was his finance minister. I said, did you know that he had cancer? He said, no. It was such a well-guarded secret. And yet, Vajpayee, after Rajiv Gandhi died, Vajpayee said, Rajiv Gandhi has saved my life. Because his cancer was detected and Rajiv sent him to the US for treatment. And he said, you're not to come back till your treatment is completed. And every prime minister after that, I remember this because when I was covering Narasimha Rao's time, and Bhuvnesh Chaturvedi, who was a junior minister in the Prime Minister's office, used to say, Vajpayee ji ko hum bhej rahe hain. Jate UNGA mein the, United Nations General Assembly, which he loved. But actually it would be his treatment that would be done. And not one Prime Minister squeaked about it. Wow. Can you imagine, आज कोई cancer होगा leading politician का, और वो बात आगे बाहर नहीं निकलेगी. Everybody will want to make capital out of it. Yeah. But such was Vajpayee's relationship with people across parties and with Prime Minister. So when this cancer was detected, this is the poem he wrote. टूटे हुए सपनों की कौन सुने सिसकी, अंतर की चीड़ व्यथा पलकों पर ठिठकी, हार नहीं मानूंगा रार नहीं ठानूंगा, काल के कपाल पर लिखता हूँ मिटाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ. So this was, his never say die spirit, that he fought cancer and so his relationships across the board, his stint as a parliamentarian, his relationship with Rajkumari Kaur.
I was coming to that in today's world it would have been blown apart like anything.
It was not married. There is an author who's written and said that Rajkumari Kaur's daughter was Vajpayee's daughter. वो लिखा है, अभी निकली है वो कुछ महीने पहले. But it was one of those relationships, they were together in college, then they separated, they went their ways, she got married, then there was a function in Ramjas College where Vajpayee was invited to speak by her husband who was a professor there, lecturer there, and they reconnected again. And then officially she lived in his house with her children when he was Prime Minister. She owned that relationship.
Without marriage, without anything.
And RSS used to criticize.
No press note about it. And no.
So it was open and snide way criticized, but he owned. It was one, as I say, it's one of those. There are certain relationships in life that cannot be defined or put in a box. So he was one of those taken at that. This was a side of Vajpayee, and a very fascinating side, as was his side of being a foodie.
Yeah.
He loved Mexican food, I'm told. And जाते थे न्यूयॉर्क तो बोलते थे फोन करके यहाँ as you say steak अच्छा मिलता है यहाँ ये अच्छा मिलता है. He knew it all. And I remember even the press conferences that we would be invited to his house would always have samosa, jalebi, whole lot in the evening, and he would happily tuck in. Advani was very austere. Very austere. I remember खाने के time एक बोल थोड़ा दही का खाते थे. He was very disciplined, not Vajpayee. So these are, as I say, the persona of a leader. And so also with the others, Narasimha Rao, who differed. Just now from the Dainik Bhaskar, this gentleman would come and said, who was the Prime Minister who made the fastest decision? I said, I can tell you who was the slowest. Who just took his time over and over and said, no decision is also a decision. Yes. So Indira Gandhi was, I think, very quick when it came to that. Not always easy. Indira Gandhi is, again he asked me, I said, I don't know about good and bad. I cannot, because every Prime Minister did good and bad. So you cannot say who was better than the other. I cannot, frankly, if I'm honest. But I find Indira Gandhi very fascinating, again, maybe because she's a woman. And as a woman, she had to navigate a minefield perhaps more difficult than other prime ministers. And she got the better of her opponents.
Yeah.
Nationally, internationally, she created geopolitical history by creating Bangladesh. And of course, I have looked at why she declared an election in 77. She didn't have to. Why? Yes. To this day, this tantalizes experts. And how did she bounce back to power in 36 months? Routed all over North India and a record number of seats in 1980. Only 36 months. And how Sanjay Gandhi was responsible for her defeat because of the excesses of the emergency 1977 election. And he was the one who helped her come back to power in 1980.
Yeah, because of the tie-up they did with the RSS. That was
and then it was the RSS, her link, with the RSS. RSS had reached out to her during the emergency. They wanted the people to be released from jail. She did not घास नहीं डाला उस समय. But they established contact through Mohan Meakin company. Mohan Meakin was very, very close to Indira Gandhi at that time. Those, the liquor company.
The industrialists.
Old monks in Calcutta. And she said, I'm going to retire in the Himalayas. I'm no longer interested in politics. But I want an assurance that no harm will come to Sanjay. So they said no harm will come to Sanjay, but there was such a pressure from within the Janata government that cases should be initiated, and the Shah Commission was set up to probe the excesses of the emergency. But they said, we promise that no physical harm will come to him. Doesn't mean we don't take action for all that was done during the emergency. So anyway, so Indira Gandhi, when she came, she was out of power. Every small, big temple she visited. There was a Hindu eyesight to her during those 2.5 years. And she also used it politically. This Hinduization, she wanted the RSS to be neutral about her, which will help the Hindus consolidate behind her in the 1980 election. And which happened. She knew she had to offset the support of lots of Muslims, because of enforced sterilizations and so on. And but she was also superstitious, which many of the prime ministers have been. Superstitious to a fault, and I end my chapter. Are you able to hear me in the last row?
Yeah, you're audible.
When she came to power in January 1980, some of her aides said to her, "Ma'am, you must go to Chamunda." She was a great believer of Chamunda temple. You would send 110 रुपया भेजती थी, 101 रुपया, not 110, 101 रुपया भेजती थी, हर दूसरे महीने प्रसाद आता था उनके पास. और she said, "Yes, I'll go." And then she sent word that I want to go there on the 22nd of June. And Ramlal, the Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister, his entire entourage, Delhi say these Mohan Weekend people, some others went to make all the arrangements to be there. Suddenly, a day before, the message came that she was flying straight from Jammu back to Delhi and she would give Chamunda a miss. So the Pandit was furious. पंडित ने कहा, आम आदमी नहीं आता है तो माँ उनको माफ कर देती है, लेकिन अगर शासक नहीं आता तो माँ नहीं माफ करेगी. It's an insult. So that they placated him and they did the puja, and 23rd morning they headed back to Delhi. 50 kilometers down they got word that Sanjay's plane had crashed. And he got this new small plane and he was known to do daredevil things and acrobatics while in air. So he was doing that and the plane crashed. When this group arrived in Delhi, it was about 2:30 in the morning. Mrs. Gandhi was sitting by the body of Sanjay and she immediately got up and came to them and said, "Is this because I didn't go to Chamunda?" So she didn't think it was because of the dangerous acrobatics that Sanjay may have done. She thought because of Chamunda's wrath. And then 6 months later she went to Chamunda. And that very Pandit, this person who told me the story was from Mohan Meakin, who was there. He said the Pandit's hand shook as he did the puja. And because she did everything to perfection, Matha Tekna, the Kali Mudras, everything to perfection. And she just wept and wept and wept. And then she came out and planted trees because that was the part of the 5-point program of Sanjay Gandhi. And she just made a comment, "It's so beautiful here." Then she flew back to Delhi. That evening there was a National Herald program and she invited Rajiv to the stage and she introduced Rajiv to the crowd without saying anything, but the politicos made a mental note of it. So Indira Gandhi, such a gutsy, courageous woman who took on the US 7th Fleet in the Bay of Bengal and didn't wilt under that pressure, had become so, it was a personal religion, but as I said, she used that very effectively also to give a certain signal to the country. And but after that, the last phase of Indira Gandhi, just to sum up, was Indira Gandhi was not the same. After she came to power, she was not the Durga of earlier years. On Punjab, she really did third. She allowed the situation to get out of hand and then finally had no option but to send the army into the Golden Temple, and we all know what happened.
So coming back to their religious beliefs and the commentary in the book, that in the 1980s, Congress was busy Hinduizing their image and BJP was busy making their image more secular. And surprisingly, Babri Masjid block was not opened by the BJP government. It was PV Narasimha Rao.
Rajiv Gandhi opened the locks of the
Yes.
Yeah, the story, this is very interesting. The Hinduization of Indian politics, which led to the rise and rise and rise of the BJP, was actually done by Congress prime ministers. Rajiv Gandhi, because there was the Shah Banu judgment, which it's a kind of judgment that comes every day. There must be scores of those judgments coming in the courts of India, giving maintenance to a poor divorced woman who had 5 children. She was in her 60s, Shah Banu, and who'd been given, triple talaq, and 25 rupees ka maintenance diya under the CRPC. So the Muslim community was up in arms that it was an interference in their personal law, and they came out in thousands. So Rajiv Gandhi initially was said this must be done. It's justice for an old divorced woman. But under pressure from the community that came out, so he decided to bring the Muslim Women Bill to undo that judgment. And the Hindus were up in arms. And under their pressure and Arun Nehru, his cousin's advice, he got the locks at the Babri Masjid open, which had been put there in 1950. 49 May, Ram Lalla ki murti was smuggled into the Babri Masjid, Sanctum Sanctorum, dead of night, on the 22nd of December. And then the status quo was maintained and court mein gaye. The local DM was part of this whole thing, and court put a tala. It was not court put a tala, administration put a tala that there may not be riots. So that tala was opened in 86 when Rajiv was Prime Minister. And I remember...
The Home Minister had gone and done that, right?
No, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh was told by Rajiv and Arun Nehru to get this done. And I remember touring UP in the months that, 3 months that followed, and there was so much tension and polarization and communal feeling and hatred amongst the community. It was really very painful to see that. I'd done a series of articles for the Statesman where I was. So the whole process, the politics of the 30 years that followed, started then. And then Narasimha Rao in 1992 did not do enough to prevent the Babri Masjid from being demolished. Where he felt that he had a sense that it could go, and I've documented this. 4 journalists seeing him 3-4 days after the demolition, saying that we hear you were sleeping and doing puja when the Babri Masjid was being brought down. And he got very provoked. And he said, do you think I don't know Rajniti? I was born in Rajniti. I knew what I was doing. I allowed it to happen. So this festering sore would go out for all time to come. The festering sore went on the back burner while he was Prime Minister, but came back with a vengeance in the form of, call it Hindutva, call it Hinduization of the Hindus, call it Hindu nationalism, its various forms. And I think this is, I said this yesterday also, why the Hindu has got so Hinduized. हम लोग otherwise live and let live. जो हम लोग बड़े हुए तो यही था ना, आस पड़ोस में जो लोग हैं. Now there is a baggage, there are the fault lines, there is a sense of angst. There's a feeling we'll be overtaken by them. There is an other we must not, whom we must target. So we have to understand what is happening to us and why in order to be able to address this. And of course, political parties have made use of it. And it's not just, kal mujhe koi bata rahe the, one of the experts I went to see, political scientists, he was saying, there are 3-4 things on which there is consensus in the country today. One is open up the economy. Every party agrees. The economy must be open. It happened in 91. Every party has taken it forward. 2 is competitive religion. अब बीजेपी ही नहीं कर रही है, कमलनाथ भी कर रहे हैं, आज भूपेश बघेल भी कर रहे हैं. They are also speaking the same idiom. Maybe not against the minority. That is a different. But there is a competitive religion. There is freebies. Every party is doing it because your development system has not delivered to the last man. And therefore you have to, if you have to win their vote, you've got to create a safety net. उसमें आपको लोगों को देना. आज भी when coming to Ludhiana, I was talking on the way. जैसे हमको अनाज दिया है, हमको गैस सिलेंडर दिया है. So this has come to us. So whoever gives this, and I remember women who were rag pickers in उत्तर प्रदेश से ही, मैंने कहा आपको कितना मिलता है? 400 रुपये मेरे बैंक अकाउंट में आता है, 400 रुपये आता है. अगर नमक खाया है तो देना है ना, फिर तो सामा स्मार्टर के ले भी लो और नहीं भी दो. So if things are coming in the hands of people, whether it's the Karnataka guarantees which are now being followed by other Congress states, or whether it's Narendra Modi's social welfareism, that is today also a consensus. And then this thing of elections are supreme, ideology doesn't matter. Power means elections, elections have to be won. For elections to be won, a hawa is to be created, उसमें मीडिया भी आ जाता है, और चीज़ें सोशल मीडिया भी आ जाता है, free data, all that you've been talking about. So things, it's not the India we've known, and new challenges are there. How we meet them is needs to be.
Surprisingly, I think you also mentioned in your book that P.V. Narasimha Rao let it all happen, saying that बीजेपी की मंदिर की पॉलिटिक्स को एक बार से खत्म करना है, so I'm letting it happen. On the flip side, he just fueled it, I think, more, because किसी ने भी imagine नहीं किया होगा कि राम मंदिर और ये इतना बड़ा issue बन जाएगा. But that's again coming.
But you know, it's very interesting. Narasimha Rao set up a trust. I was told Narasimha Rao also allowed it to happen because he wanted to build the mandir on the same spot himself. And he wanted to take the Hindu plank away from the BJP. And when he was negotiating on this issue, he was talking to the Muslim clergy, he was talking to the Hindu sons. तो बैठ के नीचे बैठ के अपने ऑफिस में वो वेदास पढ़ते थे, रिसाइट श्लोकास रिसाइट करते थे. All these people would be wowed. He would speak to the Muslim clergy in Farsi. He was very proficient. He could speak 10 languages. Narasimha Rao. People say the Vishwa Hindu Parishad got worried कि कहीं ये कुछ रास्ता ना निकाल दे, तो they declared the Kar Seva, which led to the demolition of the Babri Masjid. So it is again competitive politics. And Mandir, he registered a trust after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. It took 3 years, bringing all the major Hindu bodies on it to build the temple. 95 he suddenly felt जब अगर पार में वापस आएंगे तो करेंगे, because by that time the issue had lost steam. So it wasn't mandir per se.
It was more of politics.
It was politics around the mandir.
But it did change the whole scenario also. The political scenario, the demolition did change Indian perception of the normal Hindus also. You know, there was fanatism and all kind of that stuff, which changed, I think, the politics of India also. That was a major step that did. Although I am not in favor of demolition, but I think it was important also. Maybe the politicians know more about it.
I feel, somewhere the Hindu felt कि हमारा मंदिर बनना चाहिए, पर मस्जिद गिरी, वो थोड़ा गिल्ट था, because 1 year after the demolition, the BJP lost in the heartland states. Congress won. It should have been the other way around.
Yeah.
So somewhere there was a sense of guilt, and also among the moderates in the BJP. initial reaction, people like even Malkani and others, was it wasn't, we wanted it to happen, the mandir to be built, but not like
Not
this.
like this. Yeah.
So, also what happened was that it wounded the Muslim psyche in a way that we haven't yet recovered. Because they felt the Indian state and the Indian constitution could not protect their rights.
So even the Congress has been earning on that minority bill. So they have that soft corner for the minorities. Is it true to that thing? But Narasimha Rao was a different statesman actually.
Congress also used the minority vote. Huh?
That is what, yeah.
They also, ऐसा नहीं कि उनकी जिंदगी बहुत अच्छी कर दी. If you talk to people, whether it's education, jobs, they also use them. But Congress has also been rubbished for being pro-minority, which gives the other side an added advantage. It's also a war of perceptions.
But polarization has been part of all the
Yeah.
political agenda throughout the prime ministers you've discussed. Now, coming back to VP Singh and his Mandal, like most of us would vividly remember the Mandal Commission because we were all in the peak teens when it was all happening and the students were rising.
That's right.
So, but he's also been accused of politics from Mandal to Kamandal. And
His government was beleaguered. One side was Devi Lal, his deputy prime minister, gunning for him. Chandrasekhar, who was propping up Devi Lal. Another side was BJP, which had got wind that abhi sarkar zyada chalegi nahi. So let's get on with our agenda of. They planned the Rath Yatra before the Mandal. It is said that often the BJP says that the Mandir was a response to Mandal, but actually the Mandal was a response to Mandir, because VP Singh ne kaha, I had given my government 2 years. It got fast forwarded to 11 months. Because I realized BJP was on, BJP was a competitor as far as I was concerned. And very interestingly, the day Vishwanath Pratap Singh was sworn in as Prime Minister, I remember going to the BJP office and I talked to Govindacharya, a BJP leader, who was sent by the RSS to be in the BJP. And he said, हमारी असली लड़ाई तो विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह के होने वाली है. I said, आप क्या कह रहे हैं गोविंद जी? आप अभी तो सपोर्ट कर रहे हो सरकार को, वहाँ से आए हैं आप राष्ट्रपति भवन से और कह रहे हैं हमारी असली लड़ाई तो वीपी सिंह के साथ होने वाली है. That's the way it was. VP saw it and the BJP saw it. So VP was under pressure and he was under pressure. Rajiv Gandhi wanted to topple. He had dethroned Rajiv Gandhi and taken that place. Rajiv wanted to topple him. There again there was Sam Dam Dande, all that was happening. That's behind the scenes story. So VP pulled this rabbit out of the hat and felt, or Devi Lal announced kar dete Mandal Commission, 27% reservations for the OBC. So he did a preemptive move, announced kar diya, and he felt all the OBCs would rally behind him from every party, including the Congress. He used to think that ye log aayenge meri taraf. Aisa hua nahi. And his government was cut short, its term was cut short. But he used to say this, गोल मार दिया पर टांग टूट गई. And the process he started continues till today, by design or by default. The OBC empowerment continues, is now the extremely backward classes which are being really wooed by the BJP as a vote bank. So Mandal versus Kamandal, I say is no longer Mandal versus Kamandal. यहाँ भी मंडल और कमंडल है, वहाँ भी मंडल और कमंडल है. It's a matter of which is more dominant.
It's either religion or polarization. It's basically just finding your vote bank and alienizing the other. Okay, I'm going to ask you one question which I'm sure you've been asked like 1,000,000 times. And though you've gone on record to say that you did not include Prime Minister Modi in this book because he's still serving his tenure, but is there any other particular reason to have not included him? And also, I want to know whether you actually compared Modi to Jawaharlal Nehru in some parts.
Okay, I had decided to include Narendra Modi. I worked on it also. I did. And look at that wall. There are two, Nehru and Modi. That's just, one of those, you can say accidental things, quirky things, but so whether true or not, certainly the BJP and RSS, I don't know how they'll react to something like this because they like to put down Nehru.
Yes. Both are the architects. Nehru ji changed and developed the India after 47, and Modi has changed in true sense. The whole international scenario has changed when he's come as a prime minister.
That's right. And world leaders, the place in the world, of course, Nehru non-alignment today. India as a market, and a certain positioning in the South Asian Pacific region.
A stronghold there.
And many similarities are there. Ideologically, poles apart. Because Modi has a civilizational project around a Hindu Rashtra. Nehru was a secular. He felt minorities had to be taken care of in an India after partition.
Why do you
They're
say
very,
that?
very different.
Why do you say that? What has led you to say that about Modi, that he's more Hindu nation or something?
He's talked about it himself. It's a Hindu Rashtra. It's as I say, a civilizational concept of a Hindu, but Hindu Rashtra.
Yeah.
And
But on the other hand, he also talks about the civil code and everything.
we hope in the third term, मुझे कोई बता रहा था
Yeah.
कि third term में you may find Modi reaching out to the minorities that much more. I hope so.
Yeah.
He certainly talked about the Pasmanda Muslims, and so maybe. But so far, the narrative has been different in terms of polarization. And there's not just polarization, but there's a larger concept that the RSS and the BJP have, which they are pursuing. But Nehru's was very, very different. But they were both, teachers at one level. Man Ki Baat or Nehru, I remember हमारे school में आए थे, I must have been an 8-9-year-old, and we were so excited. हमारा annual day था, and he talked about countries he visited, foreign policy के issue, मतलब इनके साथ क्या हो रहा, and that's what our teachers said. But of course we all loved it. I mean, it was Chacha Nehru.
Yeah.
It was a
loved one.
yeah.
Larger than life image both of them had.
Yeah.
He was Chacha Nehru with the rose, and Modi has this
His
image,
Persona,
yes.
the different persona.
So it's
Modi's
quite similar.
optics is amazing. Of course, Nehru's optics also, that rose and the Achkan. But Modi, एक बार मैं गई थी 2012 में to Ahmedabad when the state election where he won as chief minister, became chief minister again, and he was releasing the manifesto at an event, BJP ka, and he held it like this, And I'd gone with a colleague who was a journalist in one of the TV channels. She said, Neerja, just watch. It's a perfect image. घड़ी किस एंगल पे है, कलर स्कीम क्या है, हाथ किस एंगल पे है. She said, this we are taught to capture such pictures. So his sense of optics, political marketing, he has the pulse of how to use that. I don't think any prime minister, other prime ministers use it to such
so many
effect.
things, even the gifts that he takes when he goes abroad, there is a story to everything that he does.
And everything's an event, big event. As I say, his word is, if you can describe Modi's style in one word, it's the word bhavya. He wants everything to be bhavya, grand. In fact, a quote, one of the people who worked with him closely said, he said, हमारे देश में जो काल्पनिक दरिद्रता है, we don't think of things big enough to be able to. Now he'll be faulted also. You think things, but you don't think of the details. Demonetization कर दिया कि black money आ जाएगी, but 250 notifications had to follow, revising that. So the detailing of that, so there can be, criticism of it, but certainly that's what he feels, that we've got to do things big.
Big and quickly. Big and quickly.
Quickly, yes.
One last question. Like you said, it's a lonely job, and once you reach there, you don't know what kind of decisions you are making, and sometimes there are circumstances which are dictating. Like in Indira Gandhi's case, the elections, still people are trying to decipher. And Vajpayee ji, he was such a pacified person, yet his nuclear, the whole policy and the way he did all of it, all of them did. Manmohan ji, जिनके बारे में आपने बाद में last में बोला है कि how he went against the lobbies and joined hands with the US, and तो आपको क्या लगता है कि like they reach a certain stance and suddenly there's a shift in their thought process, or is it like they want to do something for the country against the politics, against the party? All of them have done certain massive decisions which have like affected the country positively also and negatively also. Would you care to throw some light on it?
While it's true, as Gujarat used to say, even the Prime Minister of a weak coalition that's buffeted around is very, very powerful. Prime Minister's post is very powerful, and yet the Prime Ministers have to work under pressures. Contending pressures. There will be caste, communities, lobbies, your own followers. So it's not very easy to take decisions. And none of them get a clean slate to work on. It's a hand down, a legacy from the predecessor of the problem. Narasimha Rao बार-बार ये बोलते थे, I inherited the Babri problem. It's not of my making. And yet he had to deal with it. I must say, Narasimha Rao inherited the Punjab problem on the boil, Kashmir on the boil, Mandal on the boil, 200 immolations by young people had taken place, Mandir movement was on there, they were full steam ahead. Within a year he'd calmed down the temperatures. And then he had to, as soon as he took over, he had to open the economy, balance of payment problem. So it was deft handling by him. That's why Sharad Pawar at the book launch, he spoke and Rajdeep was anchoring it. Rajdeep ne pucha, each one of them, who's your favorite Prime Minister? So Sharad Pawar ne kaha ki Narasimha Rao. So it is this handling probably, and yet, of course, he couldn't win the election, as Jairam Ramesh said. He's as charismatic as a dead fish. So he had no mass connect, but he had other things. And yet, Babri Masjid ka demolition left a legacy, again, which has continued for decades. So, how would you judge this? If you ask me, is he a very good Prime Minister? मुझे बहुत दिक्कत होगी. ये भी था और ये भी था. Rajiv का ये भी था. Rajiv brought down the voting age to 18. He went in for technology missions, he brought in the anti-defection law, he went in for Assam Accord, Mizoram Accord, Punjab Accord. And yet, Shah Banu was his undo. Yeah. And from 414 seats in 1984, he came down to 197. Politically naive. Now, how would you judge? Was he a good Prime Minister? It's very difficult to make a judgment.
So we often talk about, last question, I promise. We often talk about Indira Gandhi being the most, the old veterans also, she defeated them at their games. But there are also instances she grew up in us mahal mein, Motilal Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru. She was taken to parties, she was part of the decision making since her childhood. Was that probably the reason she was so adept at handling everything like a man, more than a man also sometimes quoted? Like
Initially, when she took over as Prime Minister, as I mentioned, she was very diffident. Lohia called her a gungi gudiya in Parliament, and Muraji Desai said this ye chokri, and Nixon called her this old witch. But she was very diffident. It is from 67 when P.N. Huxer joined her in the Prime Minister's office. He was making many of the decisions for her. Those were what I call the best period. When she went in, she got the better of the old guard. प्रिवी पर्सेस को अबॉलिश कर दिया, बैंक्स को नेशनलाइज कर दिया, गरीबी हटाओ की बात की, केम बैक टू पावर, बांग्लादेश, पाकिस्तान से वॉर, सारा she went through and she showed nerves of steel actually at that time. And so there was that side. And then emergency. Suspended fundamental rights, democratic rights, judiciary, your right to go to court, media को censorship लगा दिया. It was a very different side, a very power for the sake of power was also Indira Gandhi's contribution. And many politicians who have followed her across parties looked to her as a mentor, how to get the better of your opponents, how to show this, be larger than your party, how to show this killer instinct, and somehow wrest power, retain power. She understood the nature of power, Indira Gandhi, more than I think many prime ministers. Maybe not, Narasimha Rao was also very adept at it.
But then her charisma was more like she was Amma ko milne ja rahe the. She had that mask.
Oh, she died.
Not.
You know, हमारे स्टेट्समैन ऑफिस के सामने एक मूची बैठता था. तो जिस दिन she was assassinated, I remember coming back from the AIMS to the office. Parts of Connaught Place were going up in smoke and he was weeping. हमारी माँ चली गई. So that was the identification also.
Connection with mass. Yeah, larger than life.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience, perhaps? Of course. Yes.
Ma'am, I haven't read your book completely, but after listening to you and reading a little bit of it, I can't help comparing what the series Crown did for the British monarchy and for Queen Elizabeth. That's what you're doing for the Indian Prime Ministers. You're utilizing them.
What Queen Elizabeth? What? Comparing to the British monarchy?
No. She said what the series Crown did for the British monarchy. That's how we
Yes. Oh, I wish that somebody would do a series like that. Yes. I agree with you. I agree.
I'm telling you, it's
Find somebody who's interested.
it's at the cusp of being extremely popular.
We haven't
And,
read, but looking forward to
I
read
have
this. Sounds so
questions.
interesting.
And the masala I've used is not all there. There's much more masala
I'm sure.
that can go into a
Yes.
visual kind of depiction.
So I can see a mini series being made out of this book.
So I have two questions for you. You say that it's very low, and rightly so, that it's very lonely at the top. Not only for a prime minister, for a CEO of a company, or for a superstar. जी हजूरी वाले बहुत लोग होते हैं आसपास, चमचे बहुत हो जाते हैं. So I'm wondering, could you throw some light what role the spouses of these prime ministers played?
Spouses.
Their spouses. What role did they play, and who played it the most effectively? And once you answer this, then I'll answer this.
I can do it very बहुत दूर से जो दिखा है.
हाँ जी, दूर से ही आपकी opinion.
इंदिरा गांधी तो I don't know. फिरोज गांधी के बारे में पढ़ा ही है. Their marriage didn't work. It went on the rocks very quickly. And she became the hostess of her father. Soon after he became prime minister, boys moved in with her. Sanjay used to held her responsible for the breakup with the father. And Firoz Gandhi, of course, died in 1960. So it was and Sanjay's childhood was very problematic and troubled. That's been documented quite a lot. There are books on Sanjay, there are books on her, Catherine Frank, her friend Pupul Jaikar, have written very marvelous biographies on her. Rajiv's spouse, in the Sonia Gandhi, according to me, influenced 3 prime ministers. Rajiv and Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh. In Manmohan Singh's tenure, she was half prime minister. PV, she influenced, but PV initially would go call on her every month, very frequently in the beginning, to keep her apprised on what is going on, then distanced. I think somewhere, a couple of years down the line, and this he told me himself, one of the conversations, that she had asked him, do you think I should enter politics? Because initially she turned it down. When after Rajiv's death, they wanted her to be Congress president and then go on to become prime minister, and she turned it down at that stage. So she then said, do you think I should? He said, no. But if you want, I will groom your children. I will take them with me when I travel. And but he got a sense then that she was thinking of a political career. और मुझे लगता है differences, there were many reasons, but probably started at that level. So Sonia Gandhi as a spouse, RSS से राजीव 4 बार मिले at the instance of Indira Gandhi, and Indira Gandhi told Fotedar, her aide, ML Fotedar, tell Rajiv not to discuss this at the dining table. Meaning she didn't want Sonia to know about it because she knew she was against the RSS. And I think as he went into his premiership, mother had died, probably Sonia's influence would have been there. Again, not tangibly documented, but I suspect, in what he was initially, because Arun Nehru says that Sonia Gandhi was the one responsible for the fallout between me and Rajiv. And that, he said, was 50% of Rajiv's problems. He said very candidly, after they went out of power, Arun Nehru and others. So Sonia's role was there. Manmohan Singh we know. She had a say. And Ahmed Patel, who was a political secretary, used to say this quite a lot. But ये तो हमारा role है. Politically क्या करना है? What is Dr. Saab doing? He's supposed to look after governance and administration. So that they felt it was a clear division of roles. Coming to VP Singh, his wife played a very low-key role, Sita Devi. She was there, but I don't think she influenced his decision-making at all. Vajpayee's was Rajkumari Kaul, who was a moderating influence. She was part, there was this Kashmiri mafia around Indira Gandhi, making the decisions. And Haksar was part of them. And she was also Kashmiri Brahmin, and she was connected to the Congress types. And people said that they used to see her having very vigorous arguments with Vajpayee. So she had a role there. He was not married, of course. Narasimha Rao, I don't think, had a spouse who, मतलब गांव में थी, बच्चों को देखा. There were others who may have influenced him, but really Narasimha Rao didn't allow the right hand to know what the left hand was doing. He didn't need coteries, he was self-sufficient. And Manmohan Singh's wife, Mrs. Gursharan Kaur, very sharp politically, stays in the background, but I'm sure gives him steers.
I was very curious about Gursharan.
And when I took this book and presented it, they were both very happy with the title of that chapter. The underrated Prime Minister who triumphed.
Yes.
उस टाइटल की वजह से मुझे सवाल हर जगह आता है, you've been very soft to Manmohan Singh. Whereas that's not true, but certainly the title, but it made him happy and his wife very happy.
But I loved all the titles. I loved all the titles of all the chapters. So my next question was, how did you come on the book, the name of the book? It's a very decisive name, How Prime Ministers Decide. It's like I know what I'm headed in for when I'm buying this book. How did you come up with this name?
You know, very early, of 20 years at least, I hoped to do a book. And I was wondering, should I do the decade of the 90s? Should I do coalition politics? Because that's the period I covered 25 years of coalition politics. I covered very intensively, hourly. Later I wrote columns and commentaries and all. And I felt biographies had been written, but how the prime ministers decide was an opaque. It was just not talked about. And you and I think prime minister can do whatever he wants or she wants. That's not the case. And in a democracy like ours, how do decisions get made at the top? And then I decided, I of course had interview. One of the things I've done now is take copious notes of wherever I go. Baat-sheet mein, you may not use it immediately, but I would say someday maybe they'll come in. And when the COVID came and I started to look at all my notes, I said, wow, I have so much material, and of course I was able to add to it to fill up the holes. The holes are not all filled, but so it was a fascinating idea to explore.
You made the book universal with this name. It's not only for historians, it's for leaders, corporate leaders. Everybody will want to read this, you know.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Although I've not read your book, but I've heard about your interviews and how you've spoken about the book. So how did you take the change when there was like, obviously you said the Mandal Commission is there, all those things which changed the history of India and all those prime ministers have contributed. So have you discussed in your book about the Kashmir issue and the exodus of the Hindus from Kashmir, or have you taken a note on that, and how the prime ministers were affected by that, and what was going wrong in the political scenario at that point of time that the whole thing happened and we had to migrate from our own state in our own country and become refugees?
I relied on my notes, then I relied on a huge number of interviews. Huge number. I got the chance to meet many of the prime ministers and interview them. Not Indira, not Rajiv, but after that. Ministers, MPs, bureaucrats, corporates, media, colleagues. And what was very fascinating, I felt what I call the chut bhaiyas around a politician. It's a very horrible UP term. People who may not be holding an important position, but have easy access to the prime minister. They're running, doing errands, they're carrying messages of a sensitive nature, they have the trust of the prime minister, the ear of the prime minister. Those are the people I sought out. And they are the ones who gave me a wealth of material.
The insights.
And one of them, Anil Bali, who I quote this Chowdhury story. 1999 May, I met him first in Ambika Soni's house. When I would see him, chat him up, he was close to Fatehdaar. तो उन्होंने मुझे 99 में एक कहानी बताई थी चौमुंडा की, with details, a great storyteller. When I signed up with Aleph to do the book, I went back to him. And I said, you tell me the story and put it on tape. अब 99 में जब उन्होंने मुझे बताया था, I had taken notes. I remember that red fat diary in which, that interview was transcribed. 2018, the details of that story remain the same. 19 साल बाद, unless you've seen that thing with your own eyes, you cannot manufacture it with those details. I knew then this was not a plant. I tried to corroborate stories as much as possible with one other person. But with things like this, different ways of checking that somebody is not planting information.
Did you ever had a word with Jagmohan, the governor that time in Kashmir, or you had any idea like what went wrong about the migration, and why did it happen?
Sorry, say that again.
The Kashmir issue in 1999, governor was Jagmohan.
Migration
of the Kashmiri Pandits.
Kashmiri Wala. I didn't follow it in detail apart from just writing about it as a journal. That's not what I had looked at. But certain things you do remember, that happened. And Jagmohan's appointment, Jagmohan ne kya kiya, most of, how Arun Nehru and Mufti Muhammad Saeed got him appointed there and so on. But I had to decide, not to write a chronology of what prime ministers did. I had to look at one decision, how it was made. And in that, of course, how they became prime minister, functioning, wo sab aa jata hai. But that is not a thing I looked at in detail. But there's still people alive, Farooq Abdullah, Natwar Singh.
Yes, of course, they have been a part of politics.
Repository of a lot of information still. I was given a lot of information by Naresh Chandra, who had every bureaucratic position you can think of and was trusted by Prime Minister. And I'd done a detailed interview with him and we said, "Hum phir milenge," to continue. Next I read in the papers, he's gone.
So have you had a hard time writing it about, and did you any controversy was created or something if you've written about, or it was a smooth journey for you writing the book?
No, you see, what I did was whatever I had quoted of people who are alive still, I sent it back to them for verification. I said, "Please, are you sure? Have I got you right?" Every single one of them changed a word here, a word there. Like you talk, I'm talking. If you showed me the transcription, I said, "Bapre," whatever I said. I would modify it, put it better, like that. Which was okay. They didn't go back. One or two have sanitized it, what they told me first. Like the episode about how Sonia Gandhi decided to give up prime ministership. What I have is a very sanitized version.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neerja ji and Deepika, for this fascinating conversation. It's been an amazing session. On behalf of our Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I, Zarka Jain, would like to express my sincere gratitude to Neerja ji and the inimitable conversationalist Deepika Bhalla for beautifully navigating the conversation. I also extend my gratitude to our venue and hospitality partner, Centra Greens, the Ehsaas Women of Ludhiana, as well as our patron, Shri Cement Limited. A big thank you to our receptive audience members for making the Right Circle session in Ludhiana so engaging. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation fosters cross-state cultural understanding and appreciation. We support artisans and their exquisite craftsmanship to express our gratitude to our patrons and guests by endorsing their products. We encourage everyone to buy products from these skilled craftsmen to promote the sustainability and development of handicrafts. At all our events, we serve regional cuisine, encouraging our authors to embark on a culinary journey to experience India's diverse food culture, and in doing so, we raise awareness about locally sourced ingredients in the city and community. In this context, today we are delighted to present the ethnic chikankari dupatta to Neerja ji. Chikankari needlework embroidery is a regal fusion of fashion and is the signature handloom of the city of Nawabs, Lucknow. It is a traditional and royal textile decoration style that has become a global trend for fashion enthusiasts. I would now like to request Mrs. Sanam Mehra to kindly facilitate the interview.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, please. One photo. Yes, ma'am.